Simplicity, écoutez bien. What is happening with our national debt right now has never happened before. Ça n'a pas jamais fait simplicity. 2 weeks ago, Parliament approved $620 million in borrowing. Seulement des semaines qui passaient, Parlement a approuvé $620 millions pour prêter. This week, about 10 days later, the Prime Minister Philippe J. Pierre stood in the House and spoke about fiscal stability, fiscal discipline, excesses, what have you. But inside that same budget, this budget of prudent financial management, as claimed by the Prime Minister, the government will borrow another $212 million this year. So if things are so hunky-dory and rosy, why are we borrowing $832 million? So let's be clear. $620 million already borrowed a couple of weeks ago, and another $212 more million to be borrowed this year. And do the math, it's easier. $832 million in a single year. Said Lucia, ça n'a pas jamais fait. 820 millions de dollars prêtés à dans yon l'année. Ça n'a pas jamais fait dans l'histoire Sainte-Lucie. Now the question that must be answered, was the $620 million included in the debt figures presented to the country in the House of Parliament or not? Because if it was not, then the numbers given were not complete. So let's deal with the facts. The country is being told, or let's rephrase that. The Prime Minister has told the country that the debt to GDP ratio is around 74 to 77%. Now, please note, the original target is 60%. And that's set by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the regional governments to keep debt at manageable levels and to protect economic stability. The same economic stability that the Prime Minister boasted that St. Lucia is experiencing right now. So understand this. We are already 14 to 17% above that target, above economic stability. But if the $620 million is not fully reflected in the figures, then the real debt level is higher than what was presented by the Prime Minister. And it doesn't stop there, you know. The government plans, as I said earlier, to borrow another $212 million this fiscal year. That pushes the debt even higher. And at the same time, $291 million will be spent this year just to service the debt, interest, and the debt repayments. So the picture is simple. More borrowing, higher debt, higher repayments. $291 million set aside this year to pay debt. And here is the part that cannot be ignored. St. Lucia, we're not in a crisis, you know. We're not. Is there a pandemic? Are we going through a pandemic? Is St. Lucia at war? Are we recovering from a natural disaster? And yet, this administration is borrowing at crisis levels. So let us call it plainly what it is. This administration is creating a debt crisis in this country that we will have to pay for year after year. So who is going to pay this debt? Because not the government, not the politicians, qu'est-ce qu'a payé ça? C'est pas le gouvernement qui a payé, c'est pas le politicien qui a payé, nous, je sais ici qui a payé. Nous, qui nous pour payer through taxes, higher cost of living, through le gouvernement même pareil ça même pochiwe nous ce service like a pochiwe. Mi lo haka me go depose pour nous Haïtien Jude. Right? So Gouvernement même ka prêter l'argent pour payer l'argent prêté. And here is the risk. What happens if we're hit by a real crisis? A hurricane, a global turndown, a collapse in tourism. C'est pas ça namade. Right? But governments need to plan for those things. Okay? So if our debt to income ratio is already at 80% or plus, where is the space to borrow more? Because when that happens, government will need to borrow again. But if we are already this deep, borrowing becomes harder, more expensive, and more dangerous. And that is how countries get trapped, borrowing just to pay what they already owe. So this is not about today's numbers. This is about tomorrow's vulnerability. $832 million in 1 year, said Lucia, without a crisis. Why? So when a real crisis comes, heaven forbid, what will we borrow then? And at what cost to the people of this country? Medicosa, a poor way that the bed of roses that the Prime Minister presented in the House this week is not true. We are in a crisis, said Lucia. I want to thank you for listening. May God bless you and your family, and may He continue to bless our beautiful isle, said Lucia. One love, my people. Yaman. One love.